select board and the board of health. So we had a
And
vote
it's
to
a two-year
enact it.
contract.
Yes, oh,
So
it's right
they've had
here.
it for 2 and they
No.
want to extend it
No.
for 2?
No, and this is just the little blurb right here. You guys, out of the contract, you want to? Just this little line where it said by mutual consent, which I think is the boards and Solid Waste Solutions, which would be Patrick Kennedy.
So they
So they
started
have-
with 3 years,
3-year contract.
and we somehow included a 2-year extension
That's
as
what-
an option.
Mhm.
Right.
I had a question with that regarding procurement, because I thought we weren't allowed to do more than 3-year contracts between bids. How can you pull in a 5-year contract?
You get an option.
No, it's a,
Well, most contracts, well, it depends on maybe the municipality, it may not be a regulation though, so that's my question.
I can give some background on that, because I was hired by the town jointly through Board of Health, and the Selectmen had retained me to prepare an RFP for solid waste services.
Yeah.
And at the time, it was a different approach than what we have today. What it was to try to solicit the solid waste industry to see if they wanted to run a transfer station, what it would take to run a transfer station. It was also as a contract service and essentially to lease the facility from the town, once the town acquired it from Waste Management. So there were two pathways under the transfer station aspect. The third part of the RFP solicitation was for curbside service. And it was a way for the town, where in its infancy of now having to deal with a solid waste services program for the town, which Waste Management had always provided 100% before. It was a way to see what the market would provide to the town. And also at that point, there was some decision-making that going on between the town, some discussion with the Department of Public Works, whether they could run it themselves, whether the numbers made sense, and whether the town was interested in doing it themselves. So it gave a lot of information without paying the outside world for it. They used the RFP to generate information. There was zero interest from the industry in collection services by virtue of getting in very high bids. Yes, you got bids, but it would have been impossible, it was not cost effective for the town or the users of that system to pay for curbside collection. So it went back to the transfer station. Solid Waste was the only company that was interested in actually running the transfer station. They were not interested in leasing it. Their business model is to provide it as a service to communities, and they have been doing that in several other places. Warren is one, and Town of Hadley was another one. And so this was something that they were kind of used to doing, and put forth numbers. They were the only one to fill in all the blanks, was what it amounted to. And at the time, I recall the discussions were that the town wasn't ready to take on this responsibility. This contract service looked like it was pretty reasonable, and a contract was then negotiated. The original term in the RFP was for 5 year services, and there was I recall a discussion about the ability to have a contract in town. There was a reason why it couldn't be 5 years. That's why the time frame, in order to capture the value of the good pricing through the 5 year period and meet the intent of the original RFP, was to do a 3 year contract with the ability for an extension for the remainder of the initial envisioned 5 year term. That's where
Let's see how we got there.
Yeah.
And additionally, I know trash services are exempt under 30B. you're actually outside of liquor law, so you have to go through that RFP process, really. How that translates to the contract, I think that it might still have to pass by a town meeting vote to extend past 3 years statutorily. because
Yeah,
it's-
that's what we have like a bylaw, right, where no,
I think
or
that's-
something, no
I think
contract
that's
more than
state
3 years?
law. That's state law.
That's state law?
Yeah.
Okay. We got something that even regulates our contract regs with you. We can't do more than 3 years at a
That's
time.
state law.
Okay. All right, so if I'm understanding with this then, if both boards vote to extend 2 years,
Right.
we still have to put it before the town then?
It's an extension of the 3-year contract.
Okay.
It just went, no,
I
it just
thought we
went,
didn't have
Because
to
it's
do
more
that.
than a 3-year contract, so the town would have to approve a contract that didn't go back out to bid, that wasn't for a minimum.
I think that's why we wrote it that way, so we
that's
didn't
why
have to
we
go
did it
back.
that way, so we didn't have to. Now we're just gonna redo the contract for 2 more years.
That was Heather and town council and Mark, they mostly worked on that, so maybe we can look into that. I thought that's
The
why that
option for
clause was,
additional years might, you know,
Sounds like you're trying to write yourself around whatever reg was
Yeah,
in
we've
place.
done, we've done it.
I'm not saying you can't, again, I
We've
just,
done this before on contracts where you have.
I've seen, I have seen it
years.
before done, I'm just trying to think of the exact section of law it's under.
right, and that was just questions, that's
Yeah.
really, I'm not, so in case you're curious, this started with, we're here because the contract has situations set up where the first 3 years of the contract have ended, will be ending June 30th. And the contract has a place where both the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Health vote to extend the contract for 2 more years. And we are here to discuss and probably make that vote, or potentially make that vote, and that's what this discussion, because I know you just slipped in and you didn't quite, but that is
Literally got home and changed my shirt.
what was brought to our attention of the purpose of this meeting.
I know we only have Andy till another 10 minutes. Is there anything you want to say or discuss
No,
before?
I just wanted to see if there was anything that.
Any topic you want to discuss before you leave?
No.
All right, just wanted to ask, because we only have him for a couple minutes.
Yeah, I know, he's gotta leave in another minute.
Yeah. Okay. My first thoughts on this so far, I mean, I understand the 3 than the 2 to get around the 5-year contract thing with the town, which, once again, I don't like to end around anything with the town. I think if it's gone to 3 years, the town should have their input and get to vote. I don't like any time the select board or any board tries to dodge the town's input by doing that 3-2 option. I just don't like it. That's exactly the opposite of what I see of transparency to the town and taking the public's interest into
Could you come a little
consideration.
closer so I can hear you a little better, please?
I said that any time we do something like that, do a 3-2 option instead of the straight up 5. The 5 is set up so the town has the input and the say after 3 years. And trying to circumvent that by doing the 3-2, I'm against anything like that. The town likes transparency. They've made very clear they want more transparency. And I think to continue on without that input would be exactly against the town's wishes. No matter whether we have the right to do it or we can do it, I don't think it's the right thing to do.
I don't see a problem with it.
I do.
Well, that's the difference between people.
Absolutely. I see a problem with anything that takes the town out of it when the town is supposed to have a say. To develop the 3-2, to skirt the 5-year deal, I don't like it. I just don't like it. It's 3 years and it goes back to bid, and the town should have input to extend it, I think.
Can we
But
do-
also my opinion anyways is I'd rather go forward with the town taking over the transfer station and
Well,
not continue the contract anyway.
nah, that can't happen.
Oh, it can absolutely happen. You're not gonna tell
No.
me it can't happen.
No. We're in control
You can't.
of the transfer station. The Board of Health.
Regulates
You're the regulating
proper
overseeing
operation
authority.
of the
That's
transfer
right.
station.
You're not a-
We
overseeing.
hold the permit, not the selectmen.
Okay. I've had enough, you guys, this meeting, we'll get to it another time.
No.
No, I'm not gonna.
I'd just like to clear this.
Well, we're not really here.
Without
Oh,
getting
wait,
too
we're not
invested.
done.
Can we vote on the contract, this is why we're really here, not.
This is why we're here.
No, my vote's no.
Good, leave, see ya.
Okay, well, we know what his vote is.
Okay, that's fair enough.
That's fair, that's fine. There's no reasoning with him.
Well,
Well,
we can
that was a
dis-
different discussion.
Yeah, we can discuss that after we discuss the
Yeah.
contract.
But the reason he brought it up is because that position affects this general vote. Is we are looking to see if financially it's better for the town if we can manage the transfer station as the town. And in the pursuit of looking at all these numbers to see if it would potentially alleviate some of the costs to the members of the community that use the transfer station. And if we find that we can, then we don't understand why we would still use someone else that costs more.
That doesn't cost us a dime.
No, it costs everybody that uses the transfer station $95
Exactly.
plus all their bags.
Okay,
If we can manage it so it costs those using it less, because we can then sell some of the recycled products and all the things that they've been looking into. I don't have numbers yet, so I'm not saying it's viable. I'm just saying we're reviewing it to see if it's viable. And we can reduce the cost to anybody that uses it and still cover any of the costs that we have to cover to maintain it, insurances and all the other permitting and testing and whatever else we gotta go through. And we say we can do all that and still be able to lower the rates for the people to use the transfer station and use that money to pay for what we have to do it. We think it's worth considering looking at that option. And so we started that look.
Yeah.
The problem I have here isn't so much let me rephrase it, because I don't even like to call it a problem. It's a timeline issue. I am not sure we would reach a point where we could have a viable set of numbers in front of us to make a decision like that and be able to then put everything in place by the time Solid Waste Solutions' current 3-year contract would expire.
Right.
right.
I'm not saying it's impossible.
All right,
It's a
but-
lofty goal if somebody wanted to do that.
But also remember, those containers they have down there, the crushers and everything, that's all
Those are
theirs.
the
That
compactors.
doesn't belong to
Right,
us.
we would have to go back to
You would
the
have
old
to-
container system we used to use.
You gotta remember for hiring people to be there, their insurances, the,
Exactly. that's
and
what
a
we've
lot
been
of
asking
people
to get the
don't use the
numbers for.
transfer station. They have their waste management or BFI or whoever.
And that's the question
dumpsters.
I don't have an answer to, is like how many permits has Solid Waste Solutions sold each year?
Well, that
Do
would,
we have that number, or is that even a number that's available?
we probably could get it, we don't ask them, we used to just base it off our numbers,
But,
so roughly 12 to 1,300.
Okay.
Okay,
And
roughly.
that's,
And there's roughly
understood, a good
500,
ballpark to start with.
and there's
You know-
roughly 500 privates, roughly.
Okay,
Because they give us a list, the haulers give us a list of their customers, so roughly.
all right. And one of the other things that occurs right now is we also use Solid Waste Solutions to transport materials from the sewer station. If we do it in-house, then we now are getting people in-house that have the same certifications for that similar transport potentially, and the equipment to do it, where now we're not paying them to haul it also.
That's a separate contract.
No, it's a contract between the sewer department and Solid Waste Solutions, but
Right.
it's a cost to the town. So if we can reduce that cost, these are other little costs where we might be able to save the town in a bigger picture. And so I'm just saying, these are things people are considering. It doesn't mean it's ever gonna be fruitful. But until we have the numbers to really look at,
And that's gonna take some time to put that
I
together.
don't disagree.
Yeah, that's,
But it doesn't necessarily mean it's gonna take 2.5 years. So the question is, that's why this vote and the timing of the vote and that information was a little bit difficult, because some people are saying we might not be ready for July 1st this year, but we could see ourselves, if we think it's viable, to be ready for July 1st next year. But we're voting on extending for 2 years.
Right.
well,
And
then
so I
it-
think it's just caused people to question the timeline and how this, that's all I'm saying. That's why, one, they're kind of racing to get numbers, but I'm always wary of racing to get numbers, because the first thing I'll say is take off at least 10% of the numbers you think you're gonna earn, and add at least 10% of the numbers you think you're gonna spend, because you're probably gonna be closer to the reality if you do that. You know, conservative estimating your whole budget, but that is the only reason Greg started bringing that topic up when, so you know, he was trying to present, if
But-
I'm correct, I don't wanna completely speak for him, but that, I'm just saying that's why he was bringing that up now.
But another
not just
thing,
the vote.
where we have control of down there, how come this has never been brought to us, what you guys were thinking and planning before tonight?
All I know was it a month ago? It was generally brought up,
Been going on
that
a
people have
month.
been asking questions.
That's right, but we should have been involved if
Right.
he was thinking of it. He should have come to this meeting.
I have a question.
And
How
had.
come, since I've been a select board member, Solid Waste Solutions has never come to the Board of Selectmen to explain what they're doing with the property under this contract?
Why do they need to?
Because we are part of this contract. They don't have the right to do whatever they want on the property.
No, we oversee it.
We
You're
oversee it.
regulated according to the state regulations.
I-
You
DEP.
don't necessarily oversee the you can't, it's very difficult to not be in conflict to regulate them and then also manage the contract. To say, here are the regulations and this is what you're going to do to meet it. Because now you're taking all their liability away. Because you told them what to do. And because you did that, that's why I think the balance is generally regarding the contract and use of site, I would like to do. They start with you to say, what do I have to do, what's it gonna affect, what's it, and then they come to us and say, this is what we would like to do, we've worked with the Board of Health, this is how they say to go about it, and these are the steps we're taking.
Like, what do you mean? That's an example.
Well, whether the composting thing or whatever they're, I think, approach trying to do, right? Aren't they following with
Well,
you guys or
Yeah.
DEP to?
Yes, that was us that wanted to do that.
can
We asked them if they would be willing, because that's an additional cost for them to maintain composting, right? That's extra hands, they gotta do the
Well,
work.
but it also could be additional revenue depending on how that compost got used.
The compost is
or
gonna
got
be
sold or-
available, it's gonna be available to the residents.
Right, and my question is, that was never brought to us, and we are also at least co-signers on this contract. So why were we never brought into that loop? And that's, so you're just asking, why didn't we go to you?
Yeah.
Because apparently, we need to work on bridging the gap between the two boards.
I agree.
And that's all I'm saying, I'm
That's
not
fair.
saying it's one side or the other,
No, that's
but we gotta
fair.
work in that
I
direction.
agree.
All right, let Mark speak.
Yeah, the simplest thing on the composting, solid waste has not been part of, to date, anything to do with the town's initiatives on using that other portion of the site that was just acquired or become town property. They started this transfer station agreement with only agreeing and asking them to accept a lesser size site than was originally envisioned and advertised for in the original RFP, to their credit. And another initiative they did on that smaller portion of the site, to be able to carry out the services of the agreement, to their credit, they expended $15,000 to extend three-phase power to service those compactors because of the existing limitations of the facility. So they have not to date been party to the registration of that portion of the site as a composting facility. That's been the Board of Health as the permit holder for the facility. That registration or self-certification has been submitted to the DEP. It's not an actual permit anymore.
So is the Board of Health considered the
certified.
permit holder, or just the
Yes.
town of Barre?
The
Board of Health.
Board of Health.
Okay.
The Board of Health. And nothing has occurred on on that, so there's no,
Well, I thought something
you know, the
got
composting
filed
hasn't
for
existed.
that.
Yes, we
Um,
filed with DEP for, the composting
Okay.
certificate, which was effective October 25th maybe, of 17.
And I'd like to comment about the oversight and management aspect of it. This, given the intent of the town of Barre when this was put together, in terms of both the solicitation through the RFP, the technical specifications, and how that carried into the contract negotiations, because I was involved with Andrea through that whole process. It was very clear, because the town of Barre had no experience in running a facility, but plenty of experience through the Board of Health of oversight of a facility through the many years of watching and monitoring waste management activities related to both the transfer station and the landfill. The town made it quite clear through both Board of Selectmen at that time and Board of Health that the intent was to not have the town essentially be responsible for much more to do with the transfer station other than the Board of Health oversight and monitoring role, to field complaints. All the responsibility, if you go back and look at the contract in its entirety, it's very clear that any issues, compliance issues, maintenance issues, operating expense issues, were all to go on to the contract operator. And in exchange for that, they're responsible for everything. Anything goes wrong, it's their problem, whether it's brought up by the Board of Health or DEP or some other regulatory agency in carrying out the activities of operating a solid waste transfer station. In exchange for that responsibility, the pricing and the, who's gonna get charged what and how do we do that, that also was a management aspect that was given to them. So it really made the town's responsibilities through the term of this agreement a little kind of unusual, but good for the town, because they didn't have an experience in running the financial aspects of a transfer station, or the logistical aspects of collecting trash, recycling, special waste management, waste diversion aspects. It provided for the ability for a professional that had done it before and could so document that to come in and provide that service like they had provided for others here, and pick up the ball, so to speak, when it was passed off by waste management. So the contract in its entirety, it does provide for substantial responsibility from them. If anything goes wrong, to this day, it's their problem, and any expenses associated with it, or penalties or anything else, that's their problem. In total, it's a pretty good deal for a town to be able to have someone agree to take on all that liability.
Well, that was partly why I thought they were the one filing for the compost. Because I just thought, again, your hands off, they're gonna come to you and say, now that you said we got this other 3 acres or whatever, let's take the next steps. We've had preliminary discussions way back when about things we might do, so we would like to do this. You guys explained whatever, and then pretty much said, go ahead, and then that's why I thought they were the ones that went ahead and did that, because
No.
that was more what I would have considered the hands-off, observe and monitor, not participate. Because by filing that, in a way, on behalf of a management company running it, even though we may be the permit holder, we have deferred that to them being the you're now getting into it again. You're not staying off and being unreserved and monitor. You're getting into the operation of the site. And that's where I thought our board might be better placed. And I'm not saying we would have in any way disagreed with those steps, but it would have been easier for you to shield yourselves as the Board of Health, saying, we just observe and monitor. They wanted to do that, they went to the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Selectmen said, go ahead. Then they worked with the Board of Health, and the Board of Health said, make sure you file the right paperwork and give us copies, do whatever you guys do. Because I don't know what you do, so, but I know you have a role when that happens. And that's where I was thinking that's how it would work, and why I was wondering why they never come to our board and talk to us about what they're doing with that site. And you guys know I started our relationship a little rough. So that's why I also didn't want to start pushing the buttons about, hey, why didn't Solid Waste come in here? Because I wasn't trying to step on your toes. So I was trying to, I'm just explaining where I was at the time in my head. Has nothing to do with right or wrong, but that's why I didn't come to you with these things earlier, but we're at a point where we do need to start working, rebuilding, like I said, the bridge, working the boards together.
Yeah, but we can't work together when you're gonna have them get ticked off and leave.
So,
He didn't wanna sit here and hear it out.
Well,
He's got his mind made up on what he wants to do. And I'm not gonna put up with that. This is my meeting tonight. I wouldn't do that at your meeting.
understood.
Understood. We didn't do that.
And all
That
I'm
wasn't us.
saying is, I can't speak for Greg. and what
I
he
know
does.
you can't, and I'm not
He,
picking on you
Yeah,
for
we
him.
know. We know
Greg's,
You know that.
yeah. I'll put it this way, Greg's passionate about what he believes in things, and we also know he's very strong in what he believes. And so, I think when he started speaking a little bit about what I just tried to explain, on what we thought were certain roles each board were taking, your first response was, that's our transfer station.
Yeah.
And what goes on there is yours. And I think our perspective is, what goes on is yours to monitor and observe, not to choose what happens. You just need to make sure what happens follows the regulations.
Right.
But what goes on there, in a way, is ours.
well,
I think what
I'm
goes.
just saying that's where I think he was coming from. So when you said that, he felt like you just said, no, we're not gonna be partners, and so he left. I'm not saying he's right, because I think if we waited a little longer, we might have gotten through it better. Not
Yeah.
understood each other's position, but
so.
But we're in charge of the transfer station. You guys are in partners with whoever is in there running it
On the contract.
on the contract.
On the contract then.
But Board of Health oversees everything that happens at that transfer station, just like we did at the landfill.
I would never suggest that we would even talk to Solid Waste Solutions without saying, and clear it with Board of Health. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
would
No, I
never
know what you're
suggest- I
saying.
see what you're saying. We would still have to work together if that's how we were doing it.
That's right.
So we don't meet with Solid Waste Solutions. We have a really good rapport with Patrick. When we get, the complaints come to us, obviously residents call and complain. I screen the complaint, I go down to the transfer station, I ask their side of it, I communicate that to Patrick, and it gets resolved. That's probably the most that we get
Yeah.
involved that
And
way.
everything's been going
That's
well.
how the Board of Health handles it, because the calls come into us. I mean, that's the way it is.
Yeah.
But, that's really, we don't meet with them, we just let them run it, and that's, and when we have issues, we address that. That's really as far as much as we've done. We did reach out for the composting, because we wanted to benefit the town. We have that additional acreage. We should be able to compost, which is extra grant money for us, and, will benefit the residents. It's their compost.
Right, and that's, again,
So I
I'm
think
not
that was,
necessarily knocking,
but
what-
maybe what I'm saying is, I don't know if we were wrong by not letting you know that we were doing that. I'm pretty sure Andrew knew, or whomever knew we were going forward with the certification. But I don't know that we had to notify the selectmen, and maybe we
I
did,
just
I'm not
think
sure.
maybe it really should have been more of a joint decision to do that.
Well, that's where
Because
I
once it goes in, who's running it? The contractor we both have a contract with. So,
The registration certification is written so that it anticipates the town and/or a contract operator. Very carefully written so that should these guys not be here, there's not a permit compliance issue for the town.
right, you
It-
gotta
it-
refile,
it
so
covers
change the name of
possibility,
the.
sure. Like all the permits, I mean, my advice to a town that has a contract operator is you guys always keep the permits in your name. You're always the owner, you're always on the hook with DEP as the owner. And you're better off holding your permits, because should a contractor all of a sudden default and pull out tomorrow, you guys, you don't want them being the holder of the permits. What are you gonna do, then?
Right.
Yeah,
So
we
you
did like
always
hybrid
have,
a few years ago.
the Board of Health has consistently been the permit holder for anything. For example, even in terms of the third-party inspection reporting, those are done and reported to the Board of Health, not the contract operator. So all that oversight in terms of permit compliance is what the Board of Health manages.
And I think it's just finding that balance. I mean, don't get me wrong, you guys all know, you have an entirely new select board from the day you wrote this contract.
Okay.
So there's also, we weren't there when it was discussed and developed, so we don't have the history or necessarily the intimate knowledge of what those discussions were about, the roles of each, or the expectations of the contractor in communication with different boards at end of year or whatever. How did it go? What's going on? What could we improve? Which are things that I kind of would think would be good from the contractor's perspective, because again, he has the personnel on site. He sees what's going on. He might want to state this or that to us and say, this would improve the operation, this would do this. And that's where I was never involved, so I don't know what was expected or how that does or doesn't happen. Again, I know that some of you have non-board related communication with them, whether it's you go out there and you visit the site, you talk to someone, or you call Patrick, and you may be getting some of that feedback just in that manner, which is fine. But it wasn't something that I thought was it's not what I thought this was gonna be doing. I thought it'd be more of an open, this is what was brought up, everybody in town kind of hears it, whether it's via just a board meeting that may or may not get recorded or whatever, and then we all can kind of participate in saying this is what we think we'd like the transfer station to grow into or develop into. And I guess that's just all. I'm just trying to give you my perspective. So to some of us, it just seemed like it was, whatever was going on wasn't going on where people really knew unless you were on the board of health.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, just what the basic operation of the transfer station, the fee schedules, I understand some of them are written in here clearly. I don't recall if there were any changes to the actual, like, per mattress, the bulk waste type stuff versus what the contract said, because the contract doesn't give authorization to change those.
Right, they did stop charging for their metals, and that was it's under, their bulky list is on the contract. But the mattresses, which they charged for, they allowed us to we got a grant. So, yeah, we have a grant that allowed us to do this through DEP, and them to stop collecting money, and they allowed us to do that. So they're not, so any
Right, but I
changes-
didn't know if any of the, because I haven't been chasing it, but I thought I saw a release of a new fee schedule for various, and I haven't had a chance to compare that to the fee schedule that's in here to say, did they raise those rates? And it was never brought, because they did issue or post a new fee schedule on the shed at one point in the last 2 years, a year. There was a certain point where I know the schedule got reposted, and I don't know if it changed,
I didn't look at it, to be honest.
and that's where, did it change? And if it did, who gave them the right to change it? Because the contract only gives you your bags and your your permit
Yeah,
rate increases. I'm not saying that, again, that it's unreasonable, but there is a certain point, if those fees did change, they should have been going through the two boards to say, is that reasonable, can they do it? Because by contract, they couldn't just change those fees without the two of us making a vote on that.
yeah, I don't know the bulky
So,
items.
that's all, I'm just saying,
I
those
don't
are
know. Those are
you asked
some-
for an example, and that's
Yeah.
the best I got right now, is just
Well-
little things that are going on where you're looking at it going,
And as a side note, I think for them to not charge, I don't think that's a huge issue. If they're willing to not charge for mattresses and not charge for scrap metal, I think that's good for the town. I think that making that decision.
oh
was-
no, I'm not
was-
talking
was-
about not charging.
I
I'm
see.
saying,
No,
did they
I'm just
raise
saying-
other rates that eventually make up for that not charging on the
Right,
mattresses?
and I agree on that. I don't know that it's in the contract. Something we would have to look into.
All right, Charlie, you want?
Yeah, let me give you my perspective, and it's kind of similar to Matt's, but this came up maybe a month ago or the meeting just before Christmas. So it's kind of new on the table. I wasn't sure when the contract was up. My intuitive feeling is we probably can't do it for less, but I don't mind looking into it, but I don't think it's something you're just gonna do, say, tonight. Commencing July 1st, we're all gonna be running this thing ourselves, because I don't know where you'd come up with the money, where we can come up with the money.
Exactly.
To purchase all this stuff. If we have to borrow it, any money that we would save would be gone in interest. And, you know, the finance committee and the selectmen have made a real concerted effort to build up the stabilization fund, so we'd probably have to pull it out of that, or cut the regular town budget, and I don't know where you get.
But we can't,
So it's gotta be phased in or planned in, or else.
it's
we're
gotta be planned in over time,
Yeah,
if that's what they were
that's
gonna
right.
do.
That's what I'm saying, and I know.
You're right.
And I'm well aware that, I guess it was 2013 or 14, I think the Board of Health looked into this whole issue. And I respect that work, and maybe every 4 or 5 years, we should take another look at the cost and the benefit of running it ourselves. I'm not adverse to doing what Greg wants, I just don't think it can be done between now and July 1st.
No.
I agree. I agree with
And, you
that.
know,
No.
maybe a series, we've done these I call them option type contracts, whatever you wanna call them, what you will. We have had those in the past where we've just gone out another year or so and then done a 3-year contract at the end of that, if it's a favorable contract to the town. I don't think it's a matter of concealing anything from anybody, or.
No, because nothing's gonna change.
That's right.
We made a very smooth transition when we went from waste
I know,
management
and in, you know, and I understand what you were saying, I was on the board, as was Kurt, when we had the landfill. I don't recall ever getting involved in the landfill once in a while we'd have a question or something, but nothing. The contract on the landfill was executed between the Board of Health.
Right. And you know, we've been through
And
thick and thin with that
waste
mess.
management
And,
stuff. So there's really not a change from the way it
Was
was.
that town-owned landfill, or was that?
No.
That was private.
See,
Private.
this is the
But we had-
difference, we own this
Yeah,
transfer station.
Right.
we had
where-
tipping fees and everything else coming in.
And I agree, but that's where I definitely agree, okay, that's Board of Health just managing the owner of a property running a site. When it's the towns, you gotta be careful where the Board of Health doesn't get too much into how it's run versus is it run according to the regulations. In other words, I'm just saying be careful, because you can set yourself up, no matter how you write the contract, if you start saying some things or certain things get in writing, all of a sudden, you end up directing the contractor. And then the contractor can turn around and say, you told me to do it, and then next week you penalize me for doing it, it's on you. And I'm just saying, to protect yourself, that's our role. Let us be your buffer, so you're never questioned in how you regulate the transfer station according to the state regulations. But that doesn't mean we still don't talk about what might be a final decision we should be making to protect your separation from the contract.
Yeah.
That's all, it's more of My concern is, how do we just make sure that somehow we don't accidentally undermine our attempt in the contract to make sure it's all on the contractor? And I was just curious, because I've never had anybody come to us since I've been here, how you guys are doing that, and then also regulating that. And it was just a question that perception is something that we have all kinds of laws written about. Pretty much the conflict of interest law. It's all about perception mostly, and then they actually find the reality somewhere in like 10% of those laws. So it's just, you gotta be careful of perception as much as exactly what you're doing. And so that was more the point I'm trying to raise about, maybe it's good cop, bad cop, whatever you wanna call it, that relationship we have with the contractor. And just trying to find a way for us to get together on that. Now, if it ended up, we reached a point where we thought financially it was worth taking the whole management of that in-house and we could do it. If that got to that point, it's likely it would fall under like a DPW commission through the superintendent or whatever, or maybe we create a whole nother.
Yep.
I'm just saying.
Okay,
But when
but-
that happens, I'll never question what the Board of Health tells that board to tell their people to do. Because that's your job. You know, in other words, if they're not doing their job, you beat them all up for not doing their job, and you cover your butt. Because your job is to make sure that whoever's running that is following the regulations.
All right, but here's another question. Why would you give that to the DPW and put more on his plate when they can't finish the things they have to do now?
I'm not suggesting I would. I'm saying these are things we're considering. Or we can need to consider what additional employees and the cost that
Exactly.
would fill those gaps. So that's what I mean. I agree. We can't do it with the personnel we have because
No.
we have too much to do with the personnel.
You
we
don't have enough personnel to do the
It
stuff
has
they
nothing to do
should
with
be
their
doing.
capability, it's how much time do they have? They don't have enough time. So I do agree there are other things we'd have to look at in this whole financial evaluation.
So we could look at options, so, creating a position or something for a transfer station to oversee it, but not necessarily the DPW, maybe a separate entity owned by the town, run by the town, or costed, you know, paid for by the town, right? We could look at these
That's what I'm
options.
saying, right.
But we're not ready to do
It doesn't have to
that.
fall over there, it doesn't necessarily have to fall under like the town administrator's side of municipal government. But I agree, it could land either.
It could be
We
like the
just-
transfer station monitor we used to pay for the transfer station monitor. So it could fall back onto that aspect, and then the board and the town would ultimately be running it. So that
In-
could
in a way, right,
that could be
right.
an option, but that's
All right, but-
nothing nothing that can happen by July 1st, so.
No.
And
I
nobody
think
has,
it would be a miracle to reach a point where we all come to agreement and believe and actually can fund and be prepared for that. I agree.
I agree, July
So-
1st is not realistic, so. we're-
Tonight,
Right, so what I'm saying is, what's our options now? The contract says mutual agreement between us, and then obviously we have to bring Patrick in here if his feelings aren't hurt from what he may or may not have read in the paper, and ask him if he's willing to do it. What if he's not willing to do it? Then what do we do? Then we're really in trouble.
And I understand, and
So,
that's why I was trying to be real careful here. I am not saying Solid Waste Solutions has done a bad job.
Fair
I'm
enough.
just speaking of if this evaluation shows that the town could save money, it doesn't behoove us not to do it. But there's a lot to analyze to find that answer.
right.
Yeah, and we're not, I mean, how far are we from there? Nobody's come to the board to ask for any kind of figures or costs or.
Well, there's a
anything.
lot of questions there.
I'm
I
asking you
know
how
that they've been
far.
pursuing questions from other towns that have their own transfer stations to gather that info of what do you have to go through, what are your regulations as a town-owned and run facility.
But other towns,
That's just getting
Right.
baseline info.
what are they paying for their dump stickers in bags. Some of them are paying $300 and $400 a year and $5 a bag.
That's why I totally agree. Without the numbers, these are all just
Right.
Right, so
throw it up in the air and where does it go?
All right,
So
hang on.
it's-
Kathy, you want?
Well, as a matter of fact, Matt, isn't this supposed to be the topic of conversation at the DPW meeting? coming
It's
up
supposed to
Monday?
come up at DPW Commission on Monday because
Three members went to the Groton landfill, I believe, and asked a lot of questions, and they think they have all the answers. So why can't that meeting be held up here, so these people could be here, and it could be taped so everyone would know what's going on?
I mean,
it's taped down there.
Mhm.
It's
But
just
they
not a
don't-
live feed.
Well,
Who-
why would
This
it-
is just preliminary. I don't expect anything to come out of that meeting, I'm guessing, other than words. I don't expect someone to give me a report saying, here are the numbers, here's what we need, here's what the cost, here's what you sell, here's what you can make on it. I don't think we're gonna be that close. I think what they're saying is they're gonna present general information they receive that explains how it's possible.
Why wouldn't they present it to the board? Why
Yeah.
wouldn't they present it to the Board of Health? Why would they do it at
They've been
DPW?
presented to
Well,
anybody.
because
I mean, why wouldn't
right
they
now
bring it to
they're
the Board of Health
considering
first,
it
since
as
the Board of Health
a
is the
new
permit holder?
DPW function. So they wanna bring it up to the DPW commission to say, should we continue to pursue this as something the DPW commission would be managing via the superintendent, et cetera. So I think that's why it's coming up on their agenda. Again, it's all preliminary. We're not even close to being able to make a vote to do anything with this, other than maybe a vote to say, keep looking into it. You know, like if they want some like. vote
who's
to
going
make-
around doing all this stuff? Who gave permission if
Well,
DPW
it's-
people went and everything?
Nobody asked for permission, but I wouldn't necessarily say they needed to ask for permission, because it's so preliminary. You're just looking for answers to your questions. My understanding is.
Why wouldn't they ask the
Greg
questions to
and-
our transfer station, rather than other transfer stations?
I can't answer that because
I
I'm not
agree.
them, and
Yeah,
I haven't
but-
I
talked to
get
them about
that,
it.
I understand.
All I know is, my understanding is Greg is close to some of the people in Groton's town government, and Groton has their own transfer station. And because of that, he's comfortable with the information from a town that actually is running their own, not necessarily from a town that is still using a management company where if we ask you, how much do you make when you sell your metal? Do you guys know?
We do not.
That's why he didn't go to you, because you don't do it. And that's okay, but we have a contractor that does it. And it's a fine line to ask a contractor to provide that info, because our contractors only said how much can he charge. There's no limit or no ratio to what you make versus what you charge. And I'm not saying there should have been, because especially when you wrote the RFP and all that, there's nothing we could stand on at that point to know you'll be an open book so that when you do this, you get a maximum 20% net profit or whatever on top of what you charge us. So if you start charging us so much more, and then you've gotta make a change in your fees the next year to bring them down. And I'm not saying you should have wrote it that way, because you probably would have scared away every contractor, I don't know. I'm just saying, because of that, our town doesn't have that information. So they're
Right.
going to a town where they thought that information. those
All right,
questions
Okay,
would
so-
be
now the
answered.
question on that though, who went to that town to check the fees?
I think Jason did.
Jason's getting paid for the town of Barre to be in the town of Barre. He
Right,
shouldn't
right.
be doing that. If O'Sullivan wants to do all this, he should be doing the legwork himself and not
I don't
the
think Jason did it on his own.
taxpayer.
I think Greg was with him.
But
And I
my
don't know if he
taxes
did it
shouldn't be
during work
paying for
hours.
him to do that.
I don't know if he did it during a workday. I don't have a clue.
I guarantee you he did.
I'm not gonna say you're wrong, I'm just saying I don't know, okay?
Do you want to pay for taxes when people are out of town when they should be in town working?
Of course I don't.
Okay,
Okay.
But I'm
so,
telling you, I don't know what happened. I wasn't.
Right.
I don't. even know
I
what
understand.
day
You don't
it might have
know.
went on a Saturday, because maybe they're open on I don't know the
Okay,
answer.
all right.
okay.
So I'm not gonna make
yeah.
that assumption.
Right.
I feel like we should explore other options. I think we
And
we
that's
weren't
all we're
ready,
at
we
this
weren't,
stage
we
of.
weren't ready when we went for the RFP, we just weren't.
Right.
We might be ready, but we don't know when that ready is. So might be worthwhile to explore options, but we need to make a decision.
On this.
So we can figure out what we're gonna do
For
come
2
July
years.
1st. So it gives us a 2-year window. Can we make an amendment to the contract where we can extend it only for 1 year? I don't know. Is that or can we just say, we'll take 2 years? There's gotta be a lot involved to figure out how to run the transfer station, we're just one transfer station, so I'm sure we're not gonna get the rates like Solid Waste Solution does for his recyclables and scrap and all that. So it's gonna be a lot of legwork for us, and who are you gonna use, and who's the best deal? There's gonna be a lot involved in that, so.
And how much do we transfer that compared to our capacity or our permit amount of solid waste we're allowed to move? Are we at a 50%, 80%?
You have, this was part, I think if you get a chance, Matt, go back and have somebody dig you up the original RFP, because it was pretty clever. I had early on identified that there was a freeboard of capacity at the transfer station that had never been used by Waste Management. There's 49 tons per day permitted there, and that permit carries now is transferred to the town. So there's 20-something tons per day, and the town only runs the transfer station for 2 days a week. So it's 49 tons a day times.
So we're
5
only at
days.
15%.
So there is a value that I saw in assisting the town craft the original RFP to put it out there to see if someone was interested in generating some value for the town by running this as a commercial facility once the town got a hold of it.
Where you
and
open it to
having
more than
others
just
come in.
residents.
Right. And the marketplace said back, no, it's still not enough. You guys are too out in the middle of things. You're not near a disposal. We don't have enough customers to be able to run something like that here. There was no interest from anybody. And you had everybody, you know, Casella was here looking at it. You had, you know, BFI looking at it. Waste Management obviously looked at it. You know, they know that
Nothing to do
they
with
know this marketplace better than anybody. And the only model that worked at that point was with Solid Waste Solutions. Yeah, you know, we run these little transfer stations, we make a little money doing that, we're consolidating these materials, and it seems like that's reasonable because they have extended the same kind of agreement with Hadley for several times now. Warren at least once that I know of. So the numbers must work, or these towns would have, hey, somebody can give us a better deal. Let's not do it this way again. And I invite you, I don't think it's gonna take a lot of research for you to look in the next 2 years. You have their numbers. Do you honestly think you can get a better deal for your residents in town here than what they've got here laid out in your agreement already for the next 2 years that's already embedded here? I don't think so. I'll tell you what, this marketplace is not getting richer for anyone running a small facility like this. The recycling markets recycling is gonna cost more as time goes on. There's no money to be made in recycling per se. The tipping and disposal for your trash, which is what they've embedded in your numbers here. If someone asked me out of the blue, what would you do if somebody put this in front of you? I'd tell them to grab it, because there's a lot of uncertainty in the marketplace. You have certainty here for the next 2 years for your residents. If you can beat it, I wish you the best. I don't think you can.
Go ahead, Kathy.
I just wanted to ask Mark, how many years do you have experience in the trash service?
I started working, I spent 18 years in the solid waste business, and I've been a consultant for another 12.
Okay, and how much does the Board of Selectmen have? I don't think anything.
Mine has never been to the level he has in any 1 year. I've only touched on it on various projects that have almost, yeah. I'm not even coming close to suggesting that any knowledge I have right now could contest what Mark's bringing up. What I am just saying though is we're looking to get that info. And I agree that in the next 6 months, I don't think I'm gonna have information that makes me comfortable saying, let's go that way now. That doesn't mean we might not get the information in 6 months and then still need a year to put everything in place.
Right.
I'm not even suggesting that we should plan on doing it in a year and a half from now. What I would, back to the vote part.
Yep.
One is, do we have a deadline in the contract where we have to make the vote to extend it so that Solid Waste Solutions has time to make decisions on what they're gonna do?
I don't know that there's a
I
deadline,
don't recall that
but we
reading
should,
it, but.
we wanna be prepared too if they say no. We wanna have ample,
Well,
I mean, then
right.
we're kinda
But the
up
reason I'm
the
bringing
creek.
it up mostly is just, obviously one of our members just left.
Yeah.
And it's because he wants to evaluate this stuff, and somehow deeply in his mind, he thinks that information, based on whatever discussions he's had with other people in the industry, makes him feel like this is something that can be done much quicker than most everybody else in this room. And I'm not saying he's wrong, I'm saying I don't know, I'm just saying I think that's where he's coming from. So I wouldn't want to put a vote on the table tonight knowing that he's not here, even though he walked out on his choice, I know.
He did vote.
But I do kind of like the idea of, you make a mistake, but let's give him a chance, if you know what I'm saying, like, think about it, come back. And I want to ask you, is there the opportunity for us to revisit this in the next couple weeks? Not a month or 2 months?
No, we gotta do it. Why don't you call tomorrow?
Can I ask this? Say we revisit this in 2 weeks. Can we revisit it to vote, or is it gonna be a back and
No, no,
forth
my hope-
argument about the DPW
Here's what
running
I'm
it?
trying to
Because
present.
we're not ready for that.
My hope is we have the DPW commission meeting next Monday.
Yeah,
Everybody is able to present where their progress is and what they think is an option. And then we can all discuss, this is on the table, we gotta make a decision, it's either 2.5 years or 4 months that we're gonna be prepared to do this. And can anybody in this room say we'd be prepared to do this in 4 months? And who in this room, not who knows somebody, but who in this room has ever done it? And once we have that discussion and figure out where we're at, then a week later, we can sit in front of you and I'm thinking we should be able to make the vote. But that
We have-
allows people that have been asking to have a voice and discuss this, a chance to just have that voice Monday night before we make the vote on that 2-year extension. That's all I'm saying.
all right,
Just
so
give
you're
them that
gonna, so you're
week
gonna
for a
have your
voice.
meeting Monday
Yeah,
night.
but we
Go-
don't have any numbers. They don't have any numbers. We don't have anything to say we're ready to go up and running and go live July 1st and have no compactors. And then they're gonna take all that
I
out.
completely don't disagree at all.
So what I'm saying, to simplify, why can't we vote on this to extend the contract for 2 years and have these 2 years to get all our ducks in a row? So these boards can get together, so DPW can get together, we can all figure out if it really should be the DPW, should it go back, and should it just be an employee of the Board of Health? Those are all options that we could explore in the next 2 years and make a transition and know 6 months before or a year before the contract is up that, say, Solid Waste, listen, this is the deal. We're not gonna renew your contract, we're gonna do it ourselves. Or maybe it doesn't come to fruition, and it's
And
not
You're right,
financially
but
feasible.
I don't know if on Monday someone's expecting to present numbers. So
It-
that's why I don't wanna say that someone just yesterday told me they're getting numbers. They want it on the agenda for Monday, and then between one Monday to the next, we slip in a vote that undermines what they think they can do in 4 months, without giving them the opportunity to voice it. And that's why I'm saying, get past Monday before we vote.
They
I'm
may-
asking for them to have that chance.
But even
They
if
can't present a viable argument, what's waiting 2 weeks? What's waiting 2 weeks? We already have an RFP that we barely gotta revise. if we had to rebid because solid waste solution steps away.
So if
So I
you
mean, what?
have a
what more
meeting
effort do we
Monday,
have to do,
why don't we
is
do
my
it
question.
the meeting Tuesday night? Why wait 2 weeks?
Because if they come with numbers, would you want a little time to review those numbers before you voted?
Or you're gonna
Yeah,
be
but-
right at,
I'm saying if they came with numbers Monday, do you really want to vote the next day, or do you want everybody to have a chance to review those numbers and in a week feel really comfortable with the decision they made?
what do you think?
I'd go along with that.
Okay,
Sounds fair to me.
I'm just thinking the 2 weeks isn't gonna blow a procurement process.
Right.
It's not gonna blow solid waste
all
solutions for the
right. So
future.
when would
So
that,
when's the meeting?
2
Well,
weeks?
Monday is DPW commission, so.
Yeah,
So the
Monday
next-
from yesterday, the 12th, I think.
Monday the 12th, sorry.
Oh, okay, I'm just trying to make
Yeah.
sure I remembered right.
Well, we got a selectmen's meeting
The week after that.
the week after that, and I think we need as a board just to go over the contract issue.
Right,
Yeah, I'm not adverse to extending it, but I think we just need to talk about that as a board, and then we would be prepared to meet with you right after that.
so you wanna, the board meet
I'm not
separately,
quite
not
ready
with
to-
us?
What?
You, the board of selectmen, meet to look at the contract?
Just that whether we wanna extend it for the 2 years or not.
So you wanna meet not with us, just alone?
Get this at a regular board meeting, which is,
Okay, I'm just trying to get it straight in my head.
The 20th, because the 19th is a holiday. So
Okay,
they
so the
moved
board-
the select board meeting to that Tuesday, the 20th.
All right, so the 21st, we could meet.
whenever you,
I'm more
whenever
than
your
comfortable to
meeting
do
is.
that.
So who are we meeting with?
Meet with us.
Board of Selectmen.
Not the DPW?
No, because again, this contract discussion is.
We don't need
more
them
so-
I'm
it's
just
not-
For the
asking, I
contract.
just wanna know what
Agreed,
we're
no.
doing. So
But
we're
I
gonna meet,
also, any
seem
information we
reasonable?
receive.
What's that, Charlie?
Does that seem reasonable?
Yeah, we'll do that. The- Just like we're here tonight,
Yep.
Yeah,
and
Knock it out.
we'll do what we gotta do.
yeah, I just don't wanna get in a position where we wait too long and then what if we don't have a transfer station? What if we don't make a decision? Then we're really
Well, the
over
decision-
barrel.
I really
Decision
believe
can
we
be
have
made.
to make the vote
Yeah.
on that
I mean, I will go
21st
back,
or whatever we just talked
Yeah.
about.
yeah, I'll look and see if we have a deadline. I don't recall seeing it, but I will look and see if we do have
Well, if you
one.
do, then
Yeah.
I'll let Andrew know.
Well, if they present any information Monday, numbers, things like that, I'm also gonna try to make sure that somebody gets copies to you guys. So everybody is looking at these numbers, so that if we have discussions during the vote night, you're also seeing where we're coming from, you're not like, what numbers?
So like,
Because that, again, we're mutually invested
See, I'd
in
come
this
down to
contract and this
DPW
transfer
meeting,
station.
but I don't want him walking out of the meeting if I show up.
I don't.
Right,
No, I
and
can't.
you're more than welcome to come, but if you
Oh, I
did,
know
would
I could if
suggest
I
just
want.
listen so you hear what they have to say, and then
yeah, I mean,
I heard it, and then we can talk more. I'm only saying that because sometimes discussions at the meeting does add more to whatever might be presented on paper.
Right.
Now, if you went down to Groton, to that highway department, you would not believe that it was a highway department. I worked crushing gravel for Pepperell in that town there, the two towns were together. You can't imagine what these guys come out of there. You would think it was a high paid job that they got. I mean, their equipment, they don't buy nothing new, they buy a truck that was wrecked, and they rebuild them all themselves.
Right, and I
And-
think there's potentially the vision that Greg might have when he sees that or whatever is,
Yeah.
could we become that? You know, how much can we save by
Take on, yeah.
learning to be able to do a lot of this stuff in-house? Take the wreck, turn it into a useful machine, save yourself $20,000 on a huge machine, I don't know.
They
I'm guessing. I don't,
So-
again, I keep saying things like I'm speaking for him, and that's not fair. I'm guessing at what he's thinking.
and I think Pepperell,
That's last year's, just a,
I have a calendar, I just looked it up.
I looked at it at the last meeting and went, oh, right, that's.
Right, so you said the Board of Selectmen are meeting on the 20th, so
Yeah.
Wednesday would be the 21st, if the 21st works. I don't know, do you guys meet any, does that conflict with any kind of meetings you
I
have?
do you
think the
want?
next finance committee meeting is the week after that, so I don't think we have a finance committee meeting on that Wednesday.
We generally meet earlier than, you can't be here before 6?
It's hard.
Okay,
All right.
Usually I
We'll
get
do
a-
it for 6,
6 on the 21st.
just to meet with them.
Oh, that's fine.
That
I
good?
can, I try, but I've been using so much time with
I just wanna make-
negotiations, I run out of personal time.
No, that's fine.
So, I'm kinda,
Yeah, but 6 o'clock's good?
6 is-
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
that's
Okay,
fine. We'll
Charlie,
do it
good
at
for
6.
you?
It's fine.
Good for
And you'll let Greg know?
Yep,
yes.
yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you. for
Thank you,
meeting.
and I appreciate you working with us to give us a couple extra weeks to just work through some things.
Well,
that-
we're supposed to try to work
Sure.
together.
Yes,
And this is a
I
good
think
step.
we will.
I think it's good, I
You
think,
go for it.
honestly, I don't think anybody's against the town running it. I think it's just, nobody's come to us.
And
We
I
don't
think
have-
that would be something that
No,
hopefully.
but like, where does this fall? So if the DPW, who's gonna say the DPW is gonna run it? And then who's gonna oversee them? Who's gonna sell the stickers? DPW, Board of Health? If they wanna run it, they should be responsible for every aspect of it. But then they have to ultimately answer to us, and how is that gonna work? I mean, we couldn't get them to mow the
Those are
lawn.
great questions.
We couldn't
Right.
get them to mow town property lawn.
Yeah,
I know that.
That's true.
that,
So
true
I'm
fact.
just saying,
And I was
if they
ticked
didn't
off.
respond to us for that, which they did, but very rudely, how are we gonna get them to answer to us when they run the transfer station? That's I'm just asking
that's right.
as far as my outlook of it. That's all I'm
But
asking. That's just my
We'll deal with
opinion.
that
No, no,
if
and
the
I-
time
That
comes.
bridge when it comes.
Yeah,
That's right.
that's
We'll
all.
cross that.
Right now, we just gotta find out if it's financially feasible, and then we gotta figure out how to
Yeah, if we can,
create procedures and processes.
We'll just
and
meet
all
in
of
2
that.
weeks and,
yeah, if we can make money, I think that's great. So,
all right,
I think that's all we have. Kathy, you don't have any questions?
okay.
I think we're good.
I do appreciate.
Thank you
you
very much.
considering that.
Thanks
We
for
don't
coming.
do this, So thank you.
Tell
Thank
Greg
you.
I said thanks for leaving. I know, I'm dad.
Oh, can
No,
we?
I'm just as bad, Dana. I find that half the time I make these sarcastic
I've been on and
comments in
off
my
the
meetings,
board
and then I go home and do it.
Yeah, I think we went.
You gotta stop. And I'm like, yeah, okay, all right. At least I think it's funny.
Well, I only
You
said
make an
that.
attempt.
Oh, that's kind of what it is.
I only
Like-
said that joking.
Well, that's what I mean.
I
It's
wish-
like,
you know what?
I make sarcastic comments,
Yeah.
and I'm okay with it.
Well, you know, you gotta, you can't be serious
A little
on
levity
everything.
with discussions that
I
are
agree.
serious to
We done.
people.
I agree. I wish you would have
Motion to
stayed and at
adjourn.
least listened to what we had to say, and we had a
Motion to
dialogue.
adjourn?
Okay, Joe,
Make a motion.
okay.
7:10.
But anyways.
You gotta go back.
Well, I feel we got some.
Hey, thanks.